Thank you. Governor Brainard, let me first thank you for your leadership on reforming the Community Reinvestment Act rule over the past several years. In the middle of 2020, when the Trump administration was ramming a flawed rule through the OCC, civil rights advocates, banks, and other affected parties looked to you as a serious voice in the room. And if confirmed, I have no doubt that you'll continue in that spirit as we approach Dr. King's birthday commemoration this coming week. I think about this as one of the essential elements of a move towards a more just society. So let me first ask, during the past few years, as you were engaging in that work, what did you hear from minority-led organizations about the CRA changes needed to further incentivize investments in minority communities who were disproportionately impacted during the pandemic?
Well, thank you for your question. And yes, I was very pleased that the board unanimously put out an advance notice of proposed rulemaking that I think really does provide a nice foundation for community groups and banks to give us feedback on what would be some good modernization measures. So what we hear still from many communities around the country is that they still don't have similar access to credit. There are still barriers in terms of getting that access. They really like having bank branches in their neighborhoods, but particularly in rural areas, that's not always the case. And they want to be able to have more interaction with financial institutions. They want minority depository institutions and community development financial institutions, which do tend to be very good at serving those underserved communities, to be strengthened. And they just really care deeply about the Community Reinvestment Act, as do many banks.
So would you commit to making it a top priority to work with the other regulators to issue a strong new rule in a timely fashion?
I'll certainly support that effort at the board and with the other regulators, yes.
Okay. I appreciate that because minority communities are hurting right now, and this needs to be a priority. The pandemic has brought to light how severe the lack of credit and investment dollars problems are for minority small business owners, and I think it's past time for our regulators to work together and issue an updated and effective CRA rule. So I look forward to your leadership. Ms. Thompson, New Jersey is what I call a blue chip state, a state that spurs innovation and drives the nation's economy. According to U.S. News and World Report, New Jersey has the second best public school system in the country and the highest per capita income in the country. In other words, we do a great job of educating our kids and giving them the ability to reach their potential. That's not just because New Jerseyans are smarter than their fellow Americans, but it's because we invest in our people. So this is a state that's part of a region that generates 20% of GDP for the entire nation. So we make money for the federal treasury. But as we met yesterday, and I appreciated our visit, I explained how many New Jersey homeowners are being hit with a 1-2 punch of rising flood insurance rates, an unfair cap on state and local tax deduction, the oldest deduction in the federal Internal Revenue Code, and based on thanks to the Trump tax bill, which we're fighting to reverse both of those bad policies. But I want to make sure that as director of the FHFA, you're sensitive to the concerns of homeowners, not just in New Jersey, but other high-cost states. Yes, we want to be fiscally responsible to the entities, the GSAs that are under your purview, but we can't simply do it on the backs of those that are actually generating revenue for the federal treasury. Can you comment on that?
Sure, Senator, and thank you for the question. Certainly, we care very much about the high-cost loans. As you know, last year we had a historic increase in home prices, and that hit states that have high-cost areas probably harder than most. One of the actions that we undertook was to increase the fees for some of the higher balance loans, And that may unduly impact a number of countries, a number of counties across the country. I think most of the country is not impacted, but there are about 104 counties across the country that are. Having said that, we do recognize that there is a difference between buying a home in New Jersey versus buying a home in Aiken, South Carolina. And we have excluded from this fee first-time home buyers with area median incomes less than 100%. And we've also excluded our affordable products so that there is no fee associated with first-time home buyers who live in high-cost areas. But we know that there is a huge affordability issue, especially with first-time home buyers, and we did not want to exacerbate that problem.
Thank you. Finally, Governor Brainard, the Fed has a serious diversity problem, something I keep pressing. I had it with Chairman Powell, and I'm compelled to raise it with you as well. If you're confirmed, what steps are you going to take to improve minority representation, particularly Latino representation, which is among the worst of the diversity that exists at the Federal Reserve?
Well, thank you for your question. So I think the Federal Reserve was actually founded on a recognition of the importance of bringing a diversity of perspectives to the table. That's why we have 12 reserve banks all across the country, and we have branches in communities all across the country. So we have regional diversity. We've always valued sectoral diversity. It's very important to have different kinds of backgrounds, but we really have lagged on racial and ethnic diversity. We're seeing some very important changes that we've worked very hard on at the reserve banks in terms of the boards of directors. If you look there at Latino representation, it's gone up threefold just in the last 4 years. And so now we have about 25% of our Class C directors are Latino. We have about a third that are Black, and we have now more than half who are minorities of one sort or another. So we've made progress there. But in terms of actual leadership positions, we've only ever had one Black president. We've never had a Latino president. And so that remains a very high priority. Many of those boards have spent a great deal of time making sure that we have more diverse pools of candidates and that our procedures in hiring are as good as best practices everywhere. And why? Because we know, as those who wrote the Federal Reserve Act knew, is that having more diverse perspectives at the table, diversity of every type, leads to less groupthink and better outcomes.
Thank you, Mr.